there's many things that we disagree on, but I think a key point is the actual cost of the scheme. We believe that New Zealanders will pay a lot more than the $3.17 a week that the government is saying the ETS will cost them. And when I try and stand up in Parliament and table notice of those cost increases, I stood up in Parliament last Tuesday and tried to table this price increase in Mercury Energy, as I'm entitled to do. I seek leave to table a document. The Speaker asks if there's any objection, only requires one MP to say object. The document can't be tabled. And needless to say, there are National Party MPs who call out objection. On Wednesday of last week, I stood up and tried to table the price increase notice from Contact Energy. And once again, there was objection. And I can tell you that next Tuesday, I'll be trying to table the price increase of Nova Energy, which has increased the price of natural gas to its customers in Auckland. You might say, well, you know, $3, $5 a week, what's the problem? Well, we are incurring a significant cost to not only our consumers, but particularly our exporters. And when I started this campaign 2 months ago, Don Nicholson of Federated Farmers said to me that the average profit margin for a dairy farmer was about 25 cents a kilogram of butterfat. So the ETS by 2015 was taking a quarter of their profit. Now, since then, there has been an announcement that that payout is going to be increased by 40 cents. That presumably takes the average profit to about 65 cents a kilogram. But the ETS still represents about 1/10 of a dairy farmer's profit. For a beef and sheep farmer, rather than being 10,000 a year, it's 5,000. But beef and sheep farmers are in a particularly precarious position because while they're a lot more efficient now than what they were 20 years ago, they basically get the same price for their animals, their beef, as they did 20 years ago. And so things are particularly tough for sheep and beef farmers, and particularly high country sheep and beef farmers. So we think that there is an overwhelming case for delaying the implementation of the emissions trading scheme until at least our major trading partners step up to play. And as I said, it was only just, 3 weeks ago when Prime Minister Kevin Rudd of Australia said that they'd be delaying the emissions trading scheme until at least 2013. John Key promised that he wouldn't take a world leadership position on this, and we think that he owes it to all New Zealanders to step back. A lot has happened since the legislation was passed in November. We've Australia pull out, we've had the breakdown of Copenhagen talks, we've had the Climate Gate saga where a number of the world's leading scientists have been shown to engage in less than honest and open practices. We've had countries like France cancel their proposed carbon tax on petrol. We've had a very, very cold and severe winter in Europe and the United States, which has caused their citizens to query the whole need for this sort of thing.
The government stands to rake in a whole lot more cash, which goes where?
Okay.
And for what?
The government says in the first year of the scheme it's going to get $350 million, and it's specifically excluding the windfall gains from electricity. Now their argument is that we can't be sure that Genesis is going to pay us a higher dividend. Well, no, Genesis may not pay the government a higher dividend, so rather than the money being paid to the government's bank account, it might sit in the bank account of Genesis. But either way, the taxpayer owns Genesis' bank account. So whether money's paid as a dividend, or whether it sits in Genesis' bank account, or whether it goes and buys a whole lot more wind turbines, the government will be, the government stake will be higher. So we estimate that the income won't be 350, but at least 500 million a year. Where's it going? The government has said that in the first year it's paying $1.1 billion to foresters for post-1990 forests. That's what the Minister said. Subsequently, his officials have acknowledged to me it's not $1.1 billion for post-1990. It's about 400 million as being the first down payment on the $1 billion to pre-1990 foresters. So it's paying 400 to pre-1990 foresters, and it's paying about 700 million to post-89 foresters. And of that 700, that's actually about 2.5 years payments. So if you look at the 5-year period from the beginning of January 2008 to the end of 2012, you have about 1.6 billion going to post-1990 foresters and about 400 million going to pre-1990 foresters. So there's about $2 billion going to foresters. And you ask where the money is going, it's substantially to foresters. The way that the pre-1990 operates in terms of credits is different from the way that the post-1990 works, but essentially it's going to foresters. And what's actually is that the public are not well aware of where the money's going. I was in Gore like last Monday. It's cold in Southland. If you look at the temperatures, it's about 0 degrees there at 6 o'clock in the morning. And what I was told there, I knew that there were large coal fields in Southland, and the people there said that they're up for a huge increase in the price of coal, which I now understand is about 30%. So everyone in Southland will pay more for their heating. Well, there are very large tracts of foreign-owned forestry in Southland, large tracts of Japanese-owned forestry. So in essence, the people of Southland will be paying a lot more for their heating, and the money will be going to Japanese-owned forests. There's quite a large proportion of foreign-owned forests in New Zealand. It's fair to say that there are winners from the emissions trading scheme. If you are a big shareholder in Contact Energy, you're a winner, because Contact Energy will make more money from the ETS. It'll be able to make more profit from its hydro stations, because it's renewable, it'll make a bigger profit. And clearly, if you're a big shareholder in Contact Energy, you're a winner. Likewise, if you are a big owner of forestry, you're about to get sums or allocated significant sums of carbon emissions which you can trade on the world market and get cash for. And so that's substantially where the money's going, and I don't think New Zealanders fully understand that.
Have you made any headway with finding out from NIWA an explanation from them about their dodgy temperature recordings in the last, I don't know, few decades? Okay. I know as you or Rodney Hyde have asked questions in Parliament about it.
Both Rodney Hyde and I have asked lots of questions about this in Parliament. NIWA is the SOE that is responsible for keeping our temperature records. They inherited that role from the New Zealand Meteorological Service in 1992, and NIWA has a graph on their website that shows temperature rise in New Zealand to over the last 150 years of about 1.1 degrees Celsius. If you actually look at the raw data that NIWA's collected over those 150 years, you will find that there's absolutely no increase whatsoever. The average in the 1860s, 1870s was about 12.7 degrees Celsius. Today, it's still 12.7 degrees Celsius. It's varied about half a degree either side of that, but in essence, it's been absolutely flat-lined for 140 years. How did NIWA get what was a flat line into an upward sloping line? They adjusted the data, and it just so happened they adjusted the earlier data downwards to lower the temperature, and they adjusted the most recent data upwards to increase the temperature. Now, are adjustments reasonable? Well, in some circumstances they are. So if you take we're talking about 150 years, we're talking about a long time. So if you take the temperature records in Thorndon is on the waterfront in Wellington. For a period, that weather station was replaced by a weather station at Kelburn, which is 120 metres higher. And you know that as you go up a mountain, it gets cooler. So naturally, you would expect the Kelburn temperatures to be cooler. So they made an adjustment for that, the fact that they changed the weather station. However, if you look at the same weather station in Hokitika, they also increased the height from sea level up to about 30 metres, but rather than making an adjustment to reflect the fact that it should be cooler, as they did in Wellington, they did exactly the opposite. So if you're going to adjust data because you're going up the mountain, you would expect them to adjust it the same way all the way through. And what the ACT Party has forced NIWA to do is to basically reassess their whole data. We asked for public records that information, it wasn't available. NIWA hadn't collected or hadn't recorded that data as they're required under the Public Records Act, and NIWA is basically going back and rebuilding all of their temperature data. And we think it's most unlikely that New Zealand has had an increase in temperature of 1.1 degrees Celsius, because the worldwide increase, the increase across the whole world over the last 150 years has been 0.7 of a degree, and it's generally recognised that because New Zealand is surrounded by water, the impact of that water will be to our temperature rise should be about 2/3 of what was applies to the rest of the world. So you would expect New Zealand to have a rise of no more than perhaps 0.4, 0.5 based on what's happened worldwide.